Hey, in this video, I am interviewing and talking to one of my guys, Andrew, who has worked with me the last couple of years to tell him about our remote program and how we run things. And I'm excited to show you or have him show you and tell you about his success and what he's done to get there and kind of where he was and where he is now. So he's currently a college player. And Andrew, I'll let you take it away with tell me a little bit about who you are, where you're from, what year you were in, that kind of stuff.
So, what's up, guys? My name is Andrew. I'm a current junior at Manchester University, a D3 school up in northern Indiana. Graduated high school in 2021 from Carmel High School. Only really had two, three offers out of college. Took Manchester, and I've loved it ever since. Just kind of one of those small schools. You get to know everyone, you love every day type of thing. It's a really tight community. Almost everyone's athletes. So we kind of share the same experience. No one is kind of in the dark on what we do.
Yeah. So I was telling you, we were talking beforehand about the 80 mile per hour loop that I talk about with guys where it's like you're sitting at a number, whether maybe you're sitting low 80s and you can top like 83 or 84. Like you kind of sniff it every once in a while, but you just tend to sit like low 80s. You just kind of go up and down, back and forth, back and forth. So tell me a little bit about where you were before we had ever met from like a velocity standpoint. Because I know we've seen some gains, but just kind of where you were just from like a velocity standpoint.
Yeah, before we met, I wasn't even in the 80-mile-an-hour loop. I was in the 70-mile-an-hour loop. I was sitting about 77, 79. I touched 80 a handful of times. The gains didn't really come till I hit college, was in the weight room a little bit more. But once I started working out with you type of thing, I saw jumps right away. No longer sat 78, 79. I was, starting to get into those low 80s. And after a couple weeks of hard work, I was able to hit, 84 that first summer. And then coming into that second summer with you was the big one this last summer. Came in sitting, I believe, like 82, 83. And within those 8 weeks, I was able to, every day, every velo day was a PR type of thing. Went straight from 83 to 89.1, which was, the peak all time in my career.
Yeah. Yeah, so for those of you watching, Andrew's worked with me both remotely, basically from home, getting his work in at college. He's worked with me in person, so he's kind of done a hybrid of the two over the last couple of years. And so, yeah, you had basically like almost a 5 mile per hour bump twice in those
Mm-hmm.
2 years. Tell me about when you were sitting upper 70s, what was going through your head? What was that like? Like, did you feel like this was where you wanted to be? Like, what were you doing about it?
Really had no clue. I was kind of one of those two-way guys that enjoyed playing the field a little bit more than pitching. But once I kind of got on the mound, I started loving it, and I had no clue what a good velo was for my age. So I was kind of one of those just kind of sheep being guided, not really knowing what's going on. And it, kind of dawned on me my senior year of high school, junior year of high school was like, all right, these kids throw a lot harder than me. What do I need to do to change that?
Yeah. So, what were you trying to do those last couple of years of high school?
His last couple of years it was just, lift more and kind of throw as hard as you can, but my mechanics weren't really there. Every season kind of started off with a shoulder injury, which put me out for 2 weeks, and I was back into it, and it was just kind of a continuous loop of season starts, I'm injured for 2 weeks, and then I'm full on.
Yeah. So, I mean, that had to have held you back a ton. Were you seeing any type of coaches or what mechanically you said they were off? What were you trying to do?
I saw some coaches, not really, not some often. It was kind of one of those once a week type of deals. I'll go in on a Tuesday afternoon after classes, and I'd go throw for an hour. And mechanically, it was kind of just everyone has the same cup of tea, but spins it a different way. It's the same five drills, push off the mound, land on your front foot as straight as you can type thing. And I didn't really get the whole scope of things besides just the lower half. And that's kind of what a lot of coaches when I was coming up in high school were teaching big time was, you know, push off the mound as hard as you can and stick as hard as you can.
Yeah, because what I've been talking about a lot lately is basically there's two huge power sources. Yes, your legs, number one, like you said, all coaches talk about that. And then number two, you've also got your entire trunk, your upper
Mm-hmm.
body. And so many guys, they try to push off with their legs, explode with their legs. And then from there, okay, I'm going to try and throw hard with my arm. And I know you've been in the past one of those guys where you hike up a ton with your elbow to try to really get your arm in there. And we've worked a lot on trying to get you that rotational aspect as well. So when you were saying you went once a week, and just what really wasn't working, that's almost the model. That is the most common model where you go somewhere once a week, you do the same drills. It tends to be the same drills that that coach was taught when they were playing. And like, did you feel like it was getting you any better?
In some aspects, um, as I said, I was one of those two-way guys that kind of just got on the mound and threw, not really pitched. So it gave me some more insight on what it's like to be a pitcher versus a thrower. But, it got to a point where I just kind of plateaued. I'd gain 1 or 2 miles an hour just by working on technique. But after that, there was no aspect other than just throw and throw and throw.
Yeah. And when the coaches would work with you in a session, was it group or individual?
Individual.
Okay. And so you've got a little bit more time with the coach. Were there times, because I know one of the big things I try to work on with guys is making sure that they understand what the heck I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like I, as coaches, we have a tendency to get really excited. We want to help the guy, and we say all these words and these buzzwords and these jargon words, and maybe you learn about kinesiology and all these things, and then you say, "Does that make sense?" And the kid just with a glazed over face, yes, sir," and then you just kind of do it. So how often did you find that happening?
Oh man, I was always that kid with a glazed look on his face. Uh-huh. I was kind of one of those players, coach says jump, I say how high. And
Yep.
it's not a bad thing, but there were times where I was like, I have no clue if I'm doing this right or not. And I'm just kind of looking over, hey, what's his face say? Or did he say good job or something like that? I really had no clue what I was looking for.
Yeah, that's so common. And I work so hard. So my degree is actually in elementary education. So I try to make it at an elementary level and then recognize when someone's like, yes, sir. Because you are the type of person that coaches love. Yes, sir. Jump how high, work my butt off, show up and grind. But if you have no idea what you're doing, like you said, you end up like plateauing.
Yep.
So you get to college, you started lifting some, trying to throw as hard as you can, you started to like dabble in mechanics. Then what got you to the point where you were looking for something more? Because it was after your freshman year.
Yeah, it was after my freshman year.
Okay.
It was actually a student manager of mine who had worked directly with you.
Hmm.
And I was kind of bummed. I was a freshman, so I didn't really know a lot. I wasn't expecting 30 plus innings. I think I got 10 and 2/3 my freshman year, and I got that itch. I was like, okay, man, I like this. I want to keep pitching, and I knew I had to do something more than what I've been doing to try to get more innings.
Yeah.
And that's why I got connected with you, and we've worked ever since.
Yeah. And talk about, I don't want you to think this is like bad talking college coaches. It's not. I want to talk about the constraints that college coaches have that make it so difficult for them to really truly help you to the
Mhm.
extent that we've been able to do both remotely and in person, where we go super in depth. We have all kinds of time. Where to talk about the limited time that college coaches have to work with you, the limited amount of money that they're getting paid, so where even if they want to help you and could help you the best, how limited they are.
Yeah, so Division 3 for most college sports, but specifically college baseball, it's very hands off for the most part. Um, we'll have about 28 days in the fall where we can practice, do inter squads and stuff like that. After those 28 days, it's no contact with coaches pretty much. You can't work out with them. You can still ask them questions, but they can't be there, with lifts or with, your workouts. And it's also just one of those things where Division 3, we're not like the big public schools. We're not the IUs or the Purdue's who have, a coach individualized for everything. We got a head coach and assistant coach, and if some schools are lucky, they have a second or third volunteer assistant,
Yeah.
and those are hard to come by because those people are just volunteering their time and they're not getting, you know, any compensation out of it. So it makes it challenging because you have coaches with a broader spectrum of what they need to teach. So, they may be a better infielding coach than a pitching coach. So they might just spend more time with the infielders than the pitchers. You know, Luckily, my coaching staff has been amazing. They have multiple hats they wear, and they're very well versed in those hats. So, my coach will be with the infielders for an hour, and then pitchers will come in an hour later, and he'll work with pitchers.
Yeah.
And, same thing with our other coach. He's our outfield guy, but he'll still teach. He still teaches hitting very well. I mean, last year for Manchester, he had one of the best, offensive years hitters wise, and it kind of shows that with good coaches that know a lot of what they're doing in different fields, a team can thrive very well.
Yeah. And so how many pitchers are on your staff?
Um, so again, with D3, we can only travel so many people. One, financial strengths, and two, NCAA only allows, I believe, 40 players in the dugout. So normal travel roster, if we're driving to, let's say, Hanover, one of
Well, let's talk about just practice setting where everybody's there.
practice setting, we'll have about 14.
Okay. I know when I was in college, we had, gosh, with red shirts, we would have sometimes over 20.
Yeah.
So
We'll have
talk.
we'll have about 14 guys who will, see mound time. Um, guys who just say, "Oh, I'm a pitcher," but aren't really, they're more throwers than pitchers.
Yeah.
You could probably put that number between 15 to 20.
Yeah. And that makes it difficult. So, I mean, you're trying to do everything you can to get
Mhm.
better. You're trying to work hard, especially coming off of working with me. And then you sit into a group setting where there might be 14 guys and you have only a limited amount of time. So, what does that look like from a guy that's wanting to work his butt off and would love to get as much help as possible, but there's 13 other guys?
Yeah, it's really kind of just one of those, how you manage your time. Do you know what you're doing on your end, as well as when you need the guidance, is coach available? And, luckily our coach has been very, very available. If you have a couple questions, or, you want some opinions on something, you just ask him while he's, watching another guy's bullpen, and he'll talk to you about it. So, but it can be challenging, especially as, like, if you're a freshman, you don't really know how coaches operate or how players operate. It's kind of one of those intimidating things to go up to the coach for the first time and ask a question. And our coaches always made it very clear, like, "Hey, ask us anything. We're here for you."
And how has it helped having worked with me in the past and being able to contact me throughout the season? How has it helped to have kind of that someone else there, even though you can't maybe always get as much time with the coaches or the in person? So how has it helped to have someone like a resource such as me in the program that we've done to be able to help you?
Yeah, I mean, it helps a lot because, you know I don't want to bash on my coaches, but you know me a lot better as a pitcher than my coaches might know me, and that's because just because, and when we've been in person, we've had 12-hour days with each other, where we're just talking things through, we're working on things, we're tweaking things. You understand how I function a lot better than, you know some coaches sometimes, but it's really kind of come down to, me at my best and worst in the summers, where, I struggled with something, say, mental aspect, or not eating well or not sleeping well. And you can kind of see that and notice that. And coaches, they have a lot going on. Some of them are faculty within the school, some of them are professors. So they're seeing a lot of other faces. And it can be challenging for them to kind of realize if something's off or if something's not quite right with the athlete.
Yeah. So when you send me messages, to your point, at any point in time during the season or in the off season, and you're like, "Hey, this is what's going on," I don't go straight to, "Oh, let me see your mechanics."
Mm-hmm.
That is a piece of it, but I've got a number of pillars in our program that we go over, so this is kind of a good segue. But I'm able to look at the whole picture, like you've mentioned a few times. So let's kind of talk about them. We've got basically the first one is a health first approach. Everything I do is like, how does health play into it first and foremost before we get to mechanics or like in-game situations, scenarios, whatever it is, what is your health like? The second one is kind of basically developing a new power source. We talked about it already. The trunk, working from the spine, becoming more spine dominant versus limb dominant. And then the third one is how I progress guys. So that's one of the things that my years of being a personal trainer and working with baseball players as well is you just know how to progress someone. And actually, I mean, you know this. I hold guys back. I delete velocity days, like high intent days. Like we don't do them sometimes because there's a progression about it. So let's talk about first the health first approach. I was talking about mental, physical. So we got, kind of mindset, strength, nutrition, hydration. What has been the one that stood out most to you? Or you can touch on a couple of them, and how has it helped you?
Uh, Big one is the kind of the mental approach. You know, I'm kind of one of those people that's all over the place. I'll be thinking about something, I see a butterfly, ooh, a butterfly. Um, you kind of really help me locked in on when I need to focus, how I need to focus, and when it comes down to it, what I can self reflect a lot better. Okay, what's going on in my life? Am I stressed about exams? Am I stressed about interpersonal relationships? Am I stressed about, the plumbing got shut down for 2 days and I'm all in kaboo because I haven't had a shower? Um, you've really kind of allowed us to take your pillars and take them how we want. So some guys will have a different mental approach than I will, but we all are bounded on the same principle of your mentality's got to be good for you to be good. And
Tell me about how you guys keep track of all that.
oh man, it's all in a journal. So when I was in person with you, you first day is here's a journal. You throw us a journal, like write in it every day or write in it after you throw, and that's something I've never done before. But since doing it in college, I mean, you've read my journals, you've seen my notes on velo days or toss days, and it's gone from felt good to okay, I need to do this, or I need to get more sleep, or I need to be clear and meditate before I throw in a don't be everywhere.
Yeah. Talk about it's different. I don't always get it as much in the remote group because guys don't see each other in person. But when guys get together in person, talk about how much bragging goes on with sleep.
Oh man, there were I'll tie this into Sam. So Sam was one of the guys that trained with Scott, and he actually lived with me over the summer last year. And every day it was, oh man, I got 10 hours or I got 12 hours. We're always trying to one up each other, and there were points in the day where we'd be in the basement playing like MLB The Show against each other, and clock hits 10, and Sam's just like, I'm going to bed, and it was just a race to get up to bed and go to sleep.
That's
And we'd always come in every day and we're writing down how much time we got in sleep, and if a guy maybe got 9 and everyone has 10 plus, we're like, what's going on? Like, you need to be sleeping. So we really held each other accountable with that part too.
yeah. And you're the kind of guy when you come into the facility, when you walk, like when you show up somewhere, chest is puffed and you're like going, and the first words out of your mouth, 11 hours of sleep. Like just so I love that because I mean, what people don't realize until you look at it, it's like, especially in the high school setting, and I know it's all over the place with college, but in the high school setting, guys get into this kind of this routine of I'm not gonna sleep a lot on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. By Thursday, Friday, I'm exhausted.
Mhm.
But hey, I'm gonna hang out with my buddies on Friday night and we're gonna crush 12 hours of sleep and it'll be fine. I'll feel good on the weekend. We have a good weekend, then I'm gonna restart that cycle. Where you keep doing that, and then all of a sudden you get into the summer where you're like, oh, I'll sleep all the time. And so you're sleeping a lot later until you have a Thursday 8 a.m. game, which you got to be up at 4 o'clock to drive somewhere to be there by sit like, and then you can't get to sleep because you're used to getting to bed later. And then you get no sleep, and then you got to start that day, and then your arm's not feeling that great because you're really not feeling that great. And then you repeat that process over and over weeks. Middle of the summer, you're wondering why your arm hurts.
Yep.
Well, it's because your sleep schedule's all over the place. So the fact that you guys come in puffing your chest about, and obviously I'm trying to hold you guys accountable and get all that, but you guys just ran with it, and I love that you guys brag about that.
Yeah. And then talking on the point about that in high school, it's you're filling up your tank on the weekends and then you're not refilling it throughout the week. So you're running on fumes come end of week. Excuse me. And it's just really one of those things where if you get into a good repetition cycle where you're asleep by 10, by 11, and you're up by 8 or 9, it's going to help you down the road so much.
Yeah.
And that was the big thing I kind of struggled with in college. I'm in college, I have my own bedtime, I have my own rules. Um, that freshman year was kind of rough because, I'd be going to bed at 1, 2 a.m. and I'm up at 8:30 for a 9 a.m. class. So, and it's just one of those things where, sophomore, now junior year, I've got really good at building a schedule that, okay, I'm if I'm able to, I'm off my computer by 10:30, I'm asleep by 11, and I'm up at 9 o'clock for classes.
Tell me about food. How has your food changed? Like, because I know I'm on you a lot, everybody, but you as well with food and how you've actually, um, you have graced me with your cooking skills, but tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a guy that loves to cook. So whenever I get the chance, as you saw over the summer, I was making different meals every week, and I think it was my Korean beef and rice that no, it was my beef and broccoli. I
Mm,
warmed it up in the microwave. You're like, hey man, what is that? I'm like, I got some beef and broccoli coming for you. And it's just one of those things. If you can have good, nutritious meals, you're not going to feel like crap anymore.
yeah.
And if you're able to, get your meats, get your dairy, get your grain, get everything in that food triangle, you're going to feel so much better every day. And it really kind of does help out a lot because if you're one of those guys that you wake up, you have a Pop Tart, and that has to last you from 9 o'clock till 1 o'clock till lunch. I mean, your tummy's going to be grumbling, your first class out of the day, and it's not even 10 o'clock.
And that's what's important. It's not that like even because once you get there's kind of like layers. I work with guys from a nutrition standpoint because it can be so overwhelming. Like, well, what's a protein? What's a carb? What has salt and what doesn't? Like that can get really confusing. So you're at the point now, one, because you like food and making it, but you've also kind of worked at it where it's just like you said, if you're just eating a Pop Tart or if you're not eating at all, like you're just not getting enough fuel. You
Mm-hmm.
need more. So I always start, guys, hey, we're shooting for 3 meals and 2 snacks. If you can't do that, I'm not worried about you trying to get your macros straight.
Yep.
If you know already and have an experience or a background a little bit in understanding food, then by all means, but you got to get more food.
Yeah.
Because yeah,
And that first aspect is building a healthy relationship with food. A lot of people don't truly have a healthy relationship with food. As you said, some guys forego breakfast, and you really can't forego some meals like that because you'll start to suffer. And my big challenge with you was getting those extra snacks in, and it's gotten a lot easier since being in school. It's always go to the store, a loaf of bread, a thing of peanut butter, and a thing of jelly. And I'm easily having 2 or 3 peanut butter jelly sandwiches throughout the day, just because hey, I've built that relationship. I know when I'm hungry now. I know when I've had a good meal, and if I'm hungry, I'm like, all right, make me a peanut butter jelly sandwich, and that will help fuel me throughout the day.
yeah. So that when I talk about health first with guys, it's that's where I look. I'm holding guys accountable, having them track what they're eating or what they're not, what they're drinking, what their stress levels, like all these different things. We've done the wellness scores, and we'll get into all the details, but it's that high level accountability, getting you an understanding of what you need to do and what you need to prioritize. And it helps out so much, even if, and we'll get to progressions, but even if I hold guys back. So let's talk about we really, really went
Mm.
heavy on it over the last year and a half or so, maybe 2 years, but not when you first started working with me, but that spine dominant versus limb dominant. So what that is, just briefly, is guys that are trying to yank their head and yank their arm and all these things and kick their foot and lead with their foot, like all that stuff becomes limb dominant, where you're using your limbs to try to get velocity. Meanwhile, your biggest power sources, your legs and your spine, basically right here, are ignored because you're trying to use all these things. And the difference between the guys you watch on TV and amateur athletes at every other level is they're trying to do all these mechanical things. So talk a little bit about how that was new to you, what you kind of got from it, and what it felt like.
Yeah. First day we did that. It was kind of one of those everyone's laughing because we have no clue what we're doing. It was like the first time everyone did it, and as you talked it through, I mean, I won't say you dumbed it down, but you brought it down to a level where we all can comprehend, and it's not over our heads at all. And it took a while to get used to, but after you got used to it and you realize this is how your body should be throwing, it was kind of one of those night and day differences. You know, as I said, I've always had shoulder injuries. I felt a ginormous weight just off my shoulder. I think the only thing that slowed me down was when I threw hard, and it was not even my shoulders, it was my back and lats. And those muscles were just sore. So it's helped a lot with, tapping into different muscles that some people haven't used before, as well as it takes a huge load of torque off your shoulder because you're not having to work as hard, but you're still throwing harder.
Exactly. The biggest gift I can give guys is the gift of what I call effortless velocity, where it's what Andrew just said, which is you feel like you don't have to work as hard. For a lot of guys, we have multiple guys every year, almost every month, where shoulder pain goes away. They don't have to try as hard, but it's still going as hard or harder with less effort. So I've actually coined the name with the series of drills we do that. Yeah, the first time you see them, you're like, what are we doing? We're not even throwing a baseball. This is weird. But I call them EV throws, effortless velocity throws, because we're patterning those movements that progressively work up to looking a lot more like pitching. And then we grab a baseball and we're doing it. And I love those because we can do them all the time. So everyone has a heavy dose of EV throws on a low intensity day, even on rest days, because they just don't add a lot. So let me talk about progressions. Let me the last thing we touch on here. Um, I'm curious, kind of on your end, have you ever had a coach in the past, you may or may not, that was as scripted out and scheduled and routine, like with progressions like we do, where you have a specific day based on a previous day, based on a day coming up, and sometimes we adjust it on all the progressions of, hey, because you know this, and you may not realize it or have remembered, but when I work with guys, oftentimes, depending on where they're at, I might not even encourage them to have a high intent or velocity day for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, based on where they are. So have you ever worked with someone like that in the past that had those progressions put in place? And what was it like working with me and us doing that?
Yeah. No, I mean, I've never had a progression like that before. It was always, all right, throw, get loose, and then it's a bullpen. And the bullpens are expected to be 90% plus all the time. And, coming into a progression like that, my first year, I understood, but I wasn't quite putting the pieces together. You definitely know there was still that itch in me to throw hard every day, and you would get on me so much if you asked me, hey, what's your percentage at? And I was like 70, and it was supposed to be a low intent day where you're 40-50%. You would rip on me. You'd just be like, you're not supposed to be there. Why are you doing it? And it's just like, because I want to. And it's just one of those things where I had to kind of get that out of my mind of don't be so selfish about throwing hard, but trust in you that what you're doing is right for us. And I really saw that kind of take off on my second summer with you. Was I mean, I don't think I had a high intent day for 4 weeks. And it was all because work schedule was crazy and sleep schedule from baseball season was crazy. And we finally got back into my normal rhythm. And once I was in that normal rhythm, I mean, as probably a lot of people saw online, I was, PRs every week. I was full into it. I was lifting more in the weight room. Scott will say I wasn't eating enough, but I felt like I was eating more. It was just kind of one of those things where if you trust the progression, it's going to help you so much later on down the line because you have those strong building blocks that were set forth.
Yeah, I mean, you just hit it on the nail. Like, you don't gain 5 miles per hour back to back summers over a 2 year span. So basically 10 miles per hour in 2 years by doing no progressions. And honestly, you don't do it by doing a blanket progression that everyone's doing, because you'll find a lot of programs right now online that there's more progressive programs where there's progressions built in, but that's not based on the health first approach, which is, to your point, your arm wasn't feeling great. Your schedule was crazy, stress, food. Like, we got to get that taken care of first, and then we'll put you into the progression. And like you said, and then although there were other guys that had high intent and velo days, and you did not, once you did, it was PR. Next week, PR. Next week, PR. Next week, PR. And like you just, and then other guys are like, oh man, what? He PRs every freaking week. Well, yeah, he also was frustrated and trying to figure stuff out in those first 4 weeks. Like there is a process about it. So like you right nail on the head. So that's perfect. Let me see if there's any other questions. I had some written down just to, I think we'll kind of wrap it up here, but shoot, I don't even think did you even say what you PR'd at?
I might have mentioned earlier, but yeah, I PR'd at 89.1, which was, it wasn't the fastest in the program. Basie beat me to the 90 spot, but, you know, all kudos to him. He worked hard, but it was just one of those things where everyone jumped. And I mean, even in the videos, there was, even if you weren't on a high intent day in person, it was everyone was hyping each other up. Everyone was around the mound. And, it's not something you can quite get sometimes. Now, working with you on virtually, when I have those PRs, I'm still, celebrated and congratulated. Although it might not be in that big group, there's still that aspect of, hey, you're getting that positive feedback. With some people, you might not even get that. It's just a cool, see it, see what we can do next week type of thing.
Yeah, and then I actually just added in our remote program, we have like a group messaging chat, basically wins. So every day people are putting in there, or at least a couple times a week, they're hitting their PRs or things go well on the mound. And so we bring that in-person aspect of the culture and the community, and we're then putting it into all of our remote guys too. So
Mhm.
is there any other things that you want to touch on that we didn't touch on, that like just where you were, where you are, the differences, just kind of recommending how we do things?
Um, the one thing that comes to mind, as you said, we all bragged about sleep. The other thing was we all bragged about weight and the weight train and who can gain the most weight over the summer. And that was a lot of fun because we all had guys that wanted to be 200 plus or 10 pounds over what they were, and kind of seeing that gain train, made it a good healthy competition between all of us. Like guys are putting pounds on and their velos jumping, and you know in person you saw all the puzzle pieces connecting because we are writing everything down on the board. And we come in, we write sleep first, and then take the shoes off, we go to the scale, write weight down, and then we didn't talk about it a lot, but the wellness scores, those were bragged about a lot too. Who could get the 28s, the 29s, and the 30s.
Yep.
And if you got a 27 or below, we're like, hey man, what's going on? It was just kind of one of those things where a good, great community was built. And I'll even talk to the extent of, there was a couple of days where I wasn't able to join in person, but I'm still getting FaceTime calls from the guys on Velo days because they all want everyone to be there.
Yeah.
And that's the community you've built that's come to great lengths and successes as of recently.
Yeah, it's been really cool to see. I mean, you guys obviously in person connecting, and that's a testament to you guys and your hard work. And then also to be able to take that same community aspect and put it in the remote and build that as well. Because we've got guys from all over the country.
Yeah.
I've had guys from basically all stretches of the country, where whether it's as far as like New York or Boston area, we've had people, a bunch of people from California, Texas, Florida, like, and then everywhere in between. So to get people now across the country, and we've got guys, like Sam, like some other guys, that they'll move and they'll live with some whack job Andrew.
All right.
And guys move in for the summer so they can get the remote during the season. They can be in the summer, and then guys, if they can't do that over the summer, they're still working remote. So it's awesome. Any other things you want to add in?
Mm, you know, Besides that, you know what you're doing. You're a great guy. You have everyone's best interest in minds. Whenever I get asked coaches or training, I'm always the first to recommend you because you've shown what you can do, especially in the adolescence of the Healthy Velo program, not only online but in person. And you're always available for a phone call or a text. Just one of those guys that always has the best interest of the athlete in mind versus the best interest of the company.
Dude, I appreciate that so much. All right. Well, we will hit stop now. For those of you watching, if you are interested, there's probably a link somewhere on here where you guys can find out some more information about the remote program, or just shoot me a DM somewhere. I know the main YouTube video on my channel talks a lot about that, so you guys can find out some more information there. Otherwise, thank you for watching. If you guys want to follow Andrew, are you much in social media? You want any people to follow you?
I'm not super big in social media, but my social media is McGray underscore Andrew. That's on Instagram. That's on Twitter. That's on uh, that's that really. I just use Instagram, Twitter. Um, if you want to follow me on my esports adventures, Manchester esports, you'll see me play some Valorant every now and then. But I'm just kind of all over the place.
Are people okay to reach out to you if they have any questions?
Perfect. Yeah, feel free to reach out. I'm always available. I love talking to people about sports, baseball, especially pitching.
Awesome. All right. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you guys.